This episode is sponsored by the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Rounding out entertainment for September, don't miss the Bare Naked Ladies on the 28th. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Grammy winner Bruce Hornsby performs live at Warner Theater in Washington, D.C. this Saturday night. He joined me to discuss growing up in Williamsburg, Virginia, before recording breakthrough hits like Every Little Kiss and The Way It Is, which would later become Tupac's Changes. He also describes co-writing Don Henley's The End of the Innocents, before versatile collaborations with The Grateful Dead, Branford Marsalis, Spike Lee, Ricky Skaggs, and Bon Iver. Hey, Bruce Hornsby, the legendary Bruce Hornsby, thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, if you say so. How's it going, Jason?
Oh, it's going great. I know you're from the area, but we had a huge win on Monday Night Football, the Burgundy and Gold, just last night. So I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Well, fine. I actually took a bit of an interest in that game because my son, Keith Hornsby, played basketball at LSU in the mid-teens. He was a starter for the Tigers his last 2 years there. He transferred to spend his last 2 years at LSU. So I'm an LSU dad. And so I was watching the last two great LSU Heisman Trophy quarterbacks dueling it out, and that was fun. So I had a bit of a skin in the game in that way because of my boy.
A commander in the game, you mean? No, Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels, of course.
Yeah.
Big things for Jaden. And by the way, so not only do you and I have our football allegiance, our burgundy and gold in common, we also have an LSU family in common, apparently, because my cousin Jake Fraley played baseball for the LSU Tigers and is now on the Cincinnati Reds.
Well, LSU baseball is high cotton, and so great for him. He's obviously a great college player and in MLB, so fantastic. That's really something.
Who knew? I didn't know we would have that in common. That's fantastic. Well, I do have an Orioles question later because of the Cal Ripken. I'll never forget that, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, sure.
But there we go. Tons of, both. I'm from Maryland, you're from Virginia, and you're playing DC. So lots of DMV love and stuff to talk about here. But yes, you'll be, just to remind everyone, you're coming to Warner Theater on September 28th. So only a couple days, people got to get your tickets. So yeah, it's like a homecoming for you. I would imagine you've probably played Warner Theater in your hometown-ish, home area many times. But do you have one of those little like plaques on the sidewalk? They have like a little walk of fame out there, like like almost like stars.
Well, I wouldn't think I'd be a candidate for that because you're talking about this as if it's my home area, and I guess you could say sort of. But my home area, my home area is Richmond, Williamsburg, Norfolk, Virginia Beach area. That's what, and if you take out Richmond, the Tidewater area, the Virginia Peninsula. That's my home area, and there is a goofy little walk of shame there, and I'm a part of that. So, although I want my son Keith's twin brother Russell went to Georgetown Prep, and had a great running career there as an 800-meter guy, and ended up running for the Mighty Ducks of Oregon. So, right. That's really my main connection to the DMV is my Georgetown Prep, my former Georgetown Prep son. Nice. So anyway, there's that. There are lots of regional connections, of course. And you mentioned Cal Ripken's streak-breaking game. We can talk about that because you just brought it up.
Sure.
That was an amazing time, but it's funny. It was a serendipitous moment because the only reason that happened was they found out, okay, I was great friends with the California Angels baseball team, Mark Langston, Rex Hudler, Chuck Finley, Gary DiSarcina, Wally Joyner, on and on, Dave Winfield, Chili Davis, so many.
I think Rod Carew was a manager or something.
Well, Rod Carew was the hitting coach. So yeah, all those guys, it was a great hang. So people wouldn't necessarily remember this, but their opponents were the Angels for that streak-breaking time. So someone found out that I was going to be there anyway, and that also I was bringing my great musical partner Branford Marsalis.
Right.
I'd introduced him to the Angels, so he was friends with all these guys as well.
You just won a Grammy with him like the year before or something, right? So
Yeah,
like
a couple years
you
before
guys were
that.
like a cool duo at that point.
Yeah, that's right. We won
Yep.
for best pop instrumental. Anyway, that's how it happened. And so they called us up and said, "Well, we know you're coming. You two, will you do the anthem?" Because we'd become, I don't know, semi-famous for doing the anthem for the NBA All-Star Game during the Desert Storm War in 1990-91 in Charlotte. Uh, so that happened, and what an amazing moment! It was so special to be a part of that weekend. We were there, I think, for 2 nights, and my friend the Hood caught a little pop fly from someone in the bottom of the 5th inning to make the game official.
Really? Wait, the streak tying game or the streak breaking game? Because they were both huge celebrity events.
Yeah, I think it was the streak breaking game.
Breaking.
And so,
wow.
We had already done the anthem, so then we could relax and enjoy the little pop up catch.
That was your friend that caught it? Your friend broke Lou Gehrig's streak, basically.
Yeah, Rex Hudler, look him up. He's one of the most amazing characters ever to play on the diamond. He's now the color commentator for the for the Kansas City Royals. Listen to me, old NBA geek, Cincinnati Royals. That's the old.
That's old. That's on a different sport. But it's burned into my brain that whole the tying game and the breaking game, because it was like a parade of everyone you could imagine: movie stars, musicians, local sports legends like Gary Williams and Joe Smith. Like everyone was showing up. It was unbelievable. And you and Branford performing the national anthem. You're on the piano. He's playing as well. And I'll never forget when it came time for the big when the Orioles, the crowd always goes, "Oh!"
Yes.
He almost played through it, and then he remembered, and you both stopped. And I think he like pumped his fist. But tell me about that moment when you just let it breathe for the crowd.
I actually don't remember that, to be honest.
You don't remember that? Oh, there you go.
No, I don't. But I know that it's a guy who's gone to various sports events around that area. I know that the O is always shouted by Orioles devotees, but I don't remember that we just paused. I'd be surprised if we did, but I'll go with your story.
Well, now you make me want to question my own memory. Maybe I'm apocryphal myself. I got to look it up. All right. Well,
good word, apocryphal. Like it, yes.
Probably learned it from you somewhere along the way, but you're a wizard of lyric and piano, man. So, what I would love to hear more about you growing up, as you mentioned, in that Tidewater area. I know you were born in Williamsburg, Virginia, right on the cusp of civil rights movement. Growing up on like the James River and your Jamestown settlement, where so much history is there. Did you sort of, as you got older, coming from that area, sort of like the cradle of our country in a lot of ways, did you feel sort of a responsibility for social commentary that you would go into? In the way it is, etc.
Are we such adultish people as to swallow this absurd distinction? Is it disloyalty? Is it sedition to oppose the hand of tyranny? Never. We are free Englishmen with the God-given right to tax ourselves, and we shall not yield that right, not to Parliament, not to Townsend, not to the King himself. So that's what you learn when you grew up in Williamsburg, Virginia.
Colonial Williamsburg, right there. He just quoted it.
Story of the Patriot, Jack Lord playing the lead character in that orientation movie. So when you're a kid, you'd go see that movie, and you kind of learned it. You memorized it,
right?
Just from repetition. So that served me well when I got into the piano, because the only way you really improve is by repetition and starting slow on something and gradually learning it and working up to that. So maybe my time at the CW Information Center set me up well for being someone who was not averse to massive repetition. But I'm still that. I'm still a grinder. I'm still totally immersed and involved in the pursuit of virtuosity on the instrument, as a songwriter, as a singer, all of it. So it's a lucky way to live. The pursuit of the unattainable is a great way to live one's life, and that's how I live my life. I'll never get there, but I might find some very rewarding signposts along the road that I'll never reach the end of.
I love that phrasing, man. You're a genius. None of us will ever officially reach the destination, but the pursuit of the unattainable, as you say, that's what it's all about.
Well, to our gig, then they'll hear the fruits of that labor. I've never stood still stylistically. The nostalgia loving fans of mine wish I'd made that same record of that I made my first two records stylistically. But that's just not who I am. I'm a I don't know, I'm a lifelong student, as I've mentioned, and always looking to evolve and grow. And so that's what I'm doing. But we're still very kind about it, more kind than I used to be. Really, I used to be a bit more of a contrarian about that, about not placating someone who only knows those 5 or 6.
Oh, okay.
Songs from the 80s, early 90s. I guess you can balloon it to 8 or 8 or 9 if you include the co-writes, the Don Henley End of the Innocence song that I wrote, the Jacob's Ladder that we wrote for Huey Lewis, etc. So people will get the full range of what we do, even though it's not Bruce Hornsby and the range anymore.
Pun intended. I like what you did there. Well, you said that's interesting to me. So for a while, you said that you're a little more, I don't know what the word is with it, humble or open to the nostalgic stuff than you used to be. I'm a little kind to your former self and the fans that have not picked up your newest stuff. You're kind to them.
Well, yeah, kinder. Yeah, but sometimes we get going and get rolling, and the crowd's so interested and so involved in what we're doing. It's very spontaneous. So often with our band, we'll sort of make new music in the moment, and that's the fun of it. The other is a bit of a creative prison, so I've tried to never be shackled into that prison of being the replicator of the good old songs, quote unquote. And so sometimes we'll get going and just rolling in our own reverie, and we'll just forget to do some of these things. But generally, I have the presence of mind to go, okay, catch yourself and play one of those songs, because the songs age well for me. The songs age, frankly, better for me than the original versions of it, to be honest. I'm not a huge fan of the records, the earlier records, but I like playing the songs. So everyone should win here. Everyone should be placated for the most part. I get nasty letters all the time, though, to be honest. I have for many years.
Oh, wow. Well, whatever. You're the artist. You can play whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like they're there to see you and your artistry, not a certain 1, 2, or 3 songs.
Oh, no. I think a whole lot of people are there to hear that. I totally understand it. You go to hear a concert because you've liked more than a couple of songs of this artist. You've liked 5 to 10 of their songs, or maybe, hopefully more. So I get it. And so that's why I try to nod to that situation, because I do care.
It's like anything, it's a balancing act, right? Hopefully they're there to see whatever creative flourishes they're pouring out of you in that moment in 2024 in Warner Theater, like whatever comes to you. But if you don't mind, we have to at least talk about The Way It Is. Come on, we have to.
Of course. Yeah.
Let's do it. So, and then we can get to some of the newer stuff at the end, but I'll try to hit some of the big ones, because there probably are some listeners who click this very podcast or whatever to hear you break down some of those hits. So similar to your set list, we got to hit a couple of them. So The Way It Is, it's such an iconic piano melody. Do you remember? Did that just come to you from the heavens? Do you remember when you first tickled those ivories with that? Dun, 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 dun. Do you remember that moment?
Well, I remember where I was. I was in the garage of my wife, Kathy, in my house in Van Nuys, California. And I was trying to get a record deal. I'd been grinding on that for about 5 years at the time, 5 or 6. Yes, I wrote it in the garage, which was we made into my little rehearsal or studio room. And when we broke big with our band, we still rehearsed there, which was fun. We didn't go big time and go to the great rehearsrsal studios. We would just get together in my house, in my garage, like we had before I got the record deal. I wrote that song based on growing up in a small southern town where narrow-minded attitudes were extremely common and pretty much prevailed. And so nobody thought it was a single. We thought enough of it to title the album The Way It Is. but I think everyone at the record company thought it was a B-side. I was lucky enough to be signed at RCA by the great former rhythm guitar player for the Zombies, Paul Atkins. Yeah, great provenance there with the great Paul. So I think Paul thought it was a B-side. Our first single was Every Little Kiss, and it was getting a little play on radio. Yeah. And so they had me, this is when they could just tell me everything that I had to do, and I would just do it, of course. Yeah. And so they would have me call radio stations that were starting to play the record. And they would send me these playlists, and I would see Every Little Kiss being added to the playlist. But I also noticed when I'd get these playlists that almost everyone who would add a second song from the album, because these were mostly what was called AOR stations, album-oriented rock. It was an old term then for a radio format. So I would notice that most always when a second track would be added, it would be The Way It Is. So that was enough for me to tell my great cohort, Paul Atkinson, that when he said, hey, maybe The Way It Is should be the single, the B-side for the first single. I said, well, let's hold off on that. Let's pick this other one that I thought you had no chance of being a radio contender. And then, so we were going along just fine in America. We'd sold 100,000 records, and then the record was released in Europe, in England. And a disc jockey on Radio 1, BBC Radio 1, heard the record and put it on the air, and boom, there it went in England, and then in Holland, then throughout Europe, then throughout the rest of the world, and then we were the last to jump on that bandwagon, and so it went all the way here too. So that was a wonderful accident, a great fluke that occurred. As you can tell, I know this story. I've told it one time. So but then so that was fantastic. That broke us open. But then soon enough, probably about 91, that was 86, 87.
Yeah.
But in 91, we started seeing, we saw the first hip hop version of The Way It Is. I forget the name of it, but the name of the artist was a British black man named MC Busby. MC Busby.
So we're building up to Tupac's changes in this point. A couple years before that. That's where I was going, but keep going, baby. I love this. I love where this is headed.
Exactly right. You know where I'm going because okay. So that came out. I don't know if it was a success, but then but every year, or maybe 2 years after that, someone else did it. Boys to Men did a version on a live record of The Way It Is. But then, okay, I believe Tupac Shakur was assassinated in Vegas in either 96 or 97. I think it was maybe 96.
It was 96, actually. I think.
Okay.
I think you're right.
No. So the next year, 97, I got a cassette in the mail out of the blue from the Shakur Foundation. I think it was run by his mom, Afeni, I believe is her name. Mm-hmm. And it had a cassette in there with this song and a note saying, we've been going through his voluminous files of recordings.
Oh, he recorded so much that came out after this thing. So much.
So these came out posthumously. But so they said, we found this song. It's called Changes. Mm-hmm. The version I had was much dirtier. It was just filled with the N word. And but they said, okay, we want to make you aware of this and also to negotiate the publishing splits for this, because this is going to be the first single off this upcoming greatest hits package. So, what a gift to just drop down from the sky into my lap. Sure enough, it came out and it became iconic to me, probably more so than my original record. Tupac's Changes is just totally for the ages. The Way It Is may also be as well. Who can say? But it was so that was an amazing score, a lucky score for me. It also served me well when my aforementioned former LSU Tiger baller Heath was playing AAU basketball from age 10 on all the way to 17 up in the Boo Williams AAU program in Hampton, Virginia, and where he was the only white dude on the team for maybe the whole time from 10 to 17. And so it gave me great credibility in the Hampton world, Hampton Newport News world. Oh, that's Mr. Hornsby. He wrote Tupac's Changes.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny how different generations, right? Because if you're around in the 80s, people are like, "Oh, that's best new artist 87 or whatever." But for honestly, I was born in 84, man. So like my generation, like I can't confirm this, but I might have even heard Changes first and then rediscovered G Double, and you know what I mean? So it's fun, like but that's interesting you're saying that. So so you changed the lyrics a little bit, but there's some powerful poetry in there. I mean, it's burned in my brain. Can I, brother, get a little piece? There's war in the streets and the war in the Middle East. Instead of war on poverty, they got a war on drugs. The police can buy them. I mean, it's great. But the one thing I think that your original version is slightly better is, and I like the phrasing of your chorus better, because it's you juxtapose the apathy of that's just the way it is, or the defeatist attitude. Some things will never change, but don't you believe them? I would
say it's the intransigence of that crowd.
Boom, there it is.
Unswervingly tied to what's happening now. That's just the way it is. Some things will never change. So the key line of the song, of course, is "Yeah, but don't you believe them?" And exactly. So anyway, after Tupac's version, the floodgates opened, and more people continue to do it. DaBaby just did it this year, great version by the great Chicago rapper Polo G, called "Wishing for a Hero," came out about 3 years ago. It's just fantastic. And I did a little remote version of his song. Wow. It's on YouTube. It's quite fun. So
isn't it awesome how these things live on and turn into different things and different genres? I love it. Well, there's so many that we really could go into of the famous ones that people want to hear. But you mentioned
there's a good number of people who come who wish we wouldn't play any of those.
Yeah, it's probably both ways. Yeah,
they like the adventure and they like the modern and the pushing the envelope. The more, and so listen, just to set the record straight.
Yes, there's people listening to this interview probably want to hear equal bits of that. But do you mind going into End of Innocence real quick though with Henley? Like, what was it like working with him? Because like I said, you had just won Best New Artist at the Grammys, but End of Innocence is up for like Song of the Year and Record of the Year. Lost to that damn Bette Midler for Wind Beneath My. You should have plowed her over like George Costanza, Seinfeld on the softball field. But no, working with Don on that song is beautiful song, man. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm so proud of it. After we won the Best New Artist in '87, sometime that spring, he reached out to me and asked me if I'd like to write a song with him. Now, I've missed the Eagles era for the most part. I was more into Coltrane and Miles and Bill Evans and Chick Corea and McCoy Tyner and Garrett and Bud Powell and Wynton Kelly, and keep naming them. I was deeply into the jazz, into learning the jazz language on the piano. So I missed that kind of. But I really loved his solo records. Those were the ones I knew: Boys of Summer, Sunset and Grill, on and on.
Yeah.
And so I said yes. So it was an easy yes for me. And we got together again at the same house in Van Nuys. We didn't get together in my garage. I had a little upright spinet piano right as you'd come into the house. And he just sat there in a chair, and we fooled around on this and that and tried this idea and didn't really feel like we were coming up with much. And I said, Don, I have a track that I like, but I'm not really that fond of the lyrics that I've written so far. And so I don't consider that it's a song yet.
It was a concept of a song.
Okay, right. Speaking of the debate, adding politics. So the next week I went in the studio and cut a little typical Hornsby track at a time with my Lynn drum machine. One-man show, synth, bass, piano, etc. Then he came back over, and I played him the track, and he just grabbed it and said, "Yes, I love this." And he had one of the first cell phones. He left with the cassette. He's listening to his cassette in his car. And I lived near Balboa Park, which at the time still had farm fields, had agriculture, crops being grown. So he calls me from this big clunker of an old cell phone he had in 1988 or 87. and so he called me to say, wow, I'm just being flooded with lyrical ideas. I'm writing it down as I'm driving with one hand and writing with the other. I'm passing all these farm fields, these fields and pastures. And so sure enough, he wrote it pretty fast. It just inspired him. And later that fall, because I was on the road the whole summer, we cut the record. He had me come in and play everything. He basically turned it into Don's party. Had about 20 of his friends in the control room, all just drinking wine and having a ball while I played. It was let's watch Bruce record this thing. So that look, it was a great experience, and also very special for an old jazzer that like as I was. I'm also an old folkie, but I was very involved, as I mentioned, in the jazz world. We got Wayne Shorter to play sax on that, and so that was just a beautiful Wayne Shorter from Weather Report and the early Miles Davis quintets.
Early. We met him at the Kennedy Center honors. I think he just passed away, didn't he? But he was honored a couple years back. Yeah,
he did. He just passed a couple years ago. So anyway, that was very special for me. So yeah, that you've named. Yeah, kind of guess you could say two of my biggest moments from that era.
They're the biggest pop moments. But let's do, if we have time, one that's maybe for different, because my wife and I love bluegrass and Americana folk. You mentioned folk. We just went to Appaloosa Fest in Front Royal, Virginia, a different part of Virginia than where you're from. But yeah, we love that kind of music. And I know you, I guess, won a Grammy for bluegrass for the Valley Road with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, right? You and me going fishing in the dark. I love Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. But what was it like sort of stretching those chops? You know, like people think of you as sort of the jazz piano or some of the pop instrumental stuff, but like Valley Road, like that's a cool little detour, I think, and you were rewarded for it.
Well, yes, but I think the most important bluegrass moment for me, it was hardly a moment. It lasted about 7-8 years. I made 2 records with Ricky Skaggs, and that were a big deal in that world. And I finally found a Billboard chart I could be #1 on, the bluegrass chart.
Nice.
Anyway, so that's. I thought that's what you're going to bring up.
We can talk about that too if you want. I mean, Ricky Skaggs he's come on this show too. He's a legend, man. Needless to say, unbelievable.
Yeah. We'll love him. You will. The live record's called "Cluck Old Hand," and it'll make you get a speeding ticket. It's really, it's really it. Whatever it is, that record has it, and so that was a big part of my history. I consider that there are 4 deep collaborations in my history. First off, the Grateful Dead, of course, it's a huge part of my time, of my career. Early on, 1990,
was that 90 to 92 ish? You toured a
couple, 92, right? And then I would continue with, but then hell, I continued to play with them after that, and then the further festivals after that, 96, 97, after Garcia passed, and then the other ones, and then I played in 2015 for the Fare Thee Well concert. So this has kind of never ended. And then so Ricky Skaggs, But the longest running collaboration is with Spike Lee. We started collaborating in '92. He made a video for me for my song "Talk of the Town" off the Harbor Lights record, and then Chaka Khan and I wrote a song and performed it for his great 1995 movie Clockers. And I love
Clockers. Clockers is great. That was right after Crooklyn, I believe, in his filmography. But Clockers, underrated, folks, if you want to check it out. It's great.
No question. And the end title song is Chaka and me.
Didn't you do Bamboozled?
I did a song for Bamboozled. I continued to do more. And then I started scoring for him in the late aughts, like say 2008. I did an ESPN documentary scored it for called Kobe Doing Work about Kobe Bryant. And so that's continued until the last couple of years. And then the fourth is the great Justin Vernon from Bon Iver got in touch with me in about 2013-14. And we worked together a ton. I wrote a song with him for the last Bon Iver record, sat in with him at the Anthem about 2 or 3 years ago. And so that's been a deep collaboration. So those 4 disparately stylistic entities, those are the 4 deepest collaborations I've had. So we're in the era where Hornsby works with the indie pop world. Vampire Weekend, Recaning, and I did a duet a couple of years ago. It was well received. Again, Justin, Danielle Haim of the group Haim. I did a duet with her. Jamila Woods, great sort of modern R&B artist. So it's just never ended. And so we're in that era now.
This is your Taylor Swift. This is your Eras tour. We're in this part of the era now. What list them again? 'Cause everyone knows the range and noisemakers. That's what we think of. But like, what list the four you just said again? I want to know the chapter. So folks, as they're gonna dive into your discography as after they listen to this to get ready for Warner Theater. What are the four? List them again.
Okay, Grateful Dead, Spike Lee, in chronological order. Grateful Dead, Spike Lee, Ricky Skaggs, Bon Iver, Justin Vernon. Yeah.
Whew, that is range. And throw in the Tupac and stuff. That's range. That's range. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I think you also did Black Klansman and Chirac and God Willing and the Creek Don't Rise. You did a lot of Spike that we didn't even have time to get to.
Spike. Yeah. That's right. Exactly. Well, thanks for knowing. Thanks for being so informed about all this. I appreciate it.
I'm trying. You know it. You know all that. You wrote it also.
Well, right. I don't expect people to know it, but it's nice when they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Well, I didn't know we would go a freaking half hour with you. I'm just blown away. We've talked Orioles, we've talked football, LSU. I mean, we've covered it all. I'm sure. What's something complete outside the box? What filmmaker really gets you going, past or present? Other than Spike Lee, you can't say Spike because I know you're that's too tight of a comment. Of course, you're going to say Spike.
Well, I've loved David Lynch. Blue Velvet was a huge fan.
Oh my God, that's a masterpiece.
To me, it is just pretty out. A lot of people can't really deal with it. Can't really get with that. But
Dennis Hopper with that mask is one of the scariest movie villains I've ever seen. But to me, the magic of that movie is like, well, you get the waving blue curtain in the beginning, and it's eerie it's that Lynchian stuff. But to me, I love how it's like the white picket fences and the beautiful roses and the blue sky and blue velvet. It's all beautiful, Bob. You think, and then he plunges us under the grass and into the ear, and you see the underbelly, and then we come back out with the robins at the end, and everything's okay. But like, I don't know, what about for you? That's what does for me.
Well, yeah. So David Lynch is one of the greats, and he's continued to do great work. Lots of people, Scorsese.
Oh God.
I love the Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in L.A.
Hollywood. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. It's a love note to L.A.
Yeah.
You're right.
That's right.
Hey, thanks so much. The 28th, folks. Get your tickets, Warner Theater. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. Nice talking to you. Again, thanks for being so informed about all this. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for the music. Again, everyone, Bruce Hornsby, the legendary, whatever, I don't know, 12 or 13-time Grammy now, whatever you want to say now. Many.
I'm a 10-time loser.
10-time loser.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.